Hey everyone, thanks so much for checking out the podcast. Today we have Bill from Nerd Nest on, so I'm excited to have him on and chat about what he's been up to, what he's planned for the future. So, hey Bill.
Hey, how's it going, man? Happy to be here. I'm very excited.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, as you know, this is a sort of a gaming podcast with a bit of a twist. The twist is I'm just a South African guy who wants to get to know everybody over in the States.
Yeah, you're pretty far out there, man. It's like, what time is it where you are right now? It's 3 o'clock for me.
9 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah, so 6 hours difference.
Yes. Yeah, because you're East Coast, so yeah. And then it just gets worse the further across you go. Like when I
Yeah, trust me, I know. There was one episode that I did of a podcast where one of us was in Hawaii and the other one was in Sweden. And so like, and I'm in New York, so like really spread out, like happy time zone, everybody.
Yeah, and all your guests are like, "Oh, this is so early. Oh, this is so late." You're like, "It's that's the best I can do." Dear. Yeah, so I wanted to start like asking you about. So I went through your channel, and I mean, your channel spans over 5 years. So I kind of think I know the answer to the question, but have you always been into tech?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I remember when I was in college, not the first time, because I went to college multiple times, but when I was going to college, I lived about almost 2 hours away from campus with my wife and my daughter. And so I would hop in the car and I would drive to school every day and then turn around and drive back. So I was like spending like an hour, 45 minutes in the car one way.
Oh, good
and I was going back and forth. And yeah, it was a really long commute. And so I would have, do you remember the iPod Shuffle?
Yes.
The little USB stick with the buttons on it? I would load that up with tech podcasts, and I would listen to them on the drive because otherwise I would get sleepy, and like I would like trying to stay awake for this almost 4 hours that I'm spending in the car every day. I would fill it up with tech podcasts. And so that's like, yes, I've always been into technology. It's always been really interesting to me.
Yeah. And how long ago was that, the college experience?
So I graduated from college in 2006.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And started working as a teacher in 2007.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's long ago. So, I mean, that's interesting because, like you say, it's like a formative time in your life and you're listening to podcasts, and that's kind of where you've gone, you know. I just find that little part of it interesting because that's kind of where how it's gone for me. I shared on Twitter this week where when cell phones were still new, so this is like going back into the 90s, and I would go on GSM Arena, which was the only website for a while that did like content about cell phones, and I just used to obsess over that website. And okay, I'm not doing cell phones, but that's like I've always. This is before because I've been through a whole lot of things in my life. Before everything, that's what I loved, and I've gone back to it, and it brings me probably. I don't know about you. You can tell me how you feel, but like out of everything I've done, it brings me some of the most joy and fulfillment doing this.
You mean making a podcast and creating content and stuff? Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I came to this realization because I have multiple YouTube channels, and like I have a new channel that's kind of about content creation, which I'm not fully committed to just because it takes a lot of time to make stuff. Right. And as I was trying to come up with for why I wanted to make I was trying to explain to my wife why I enjoyed doing this. And I came up with this phrase that my favorite video game is YouTube. Like for years, I loved playing video games because I'm going to put a problem in front of you. You have to find a way to solve it, and then you level up. And that is the exact same thing that happens in content creation. I didn't know it when I started making content creation, it wasn't until after I had done YouTube for a while that I realized that YouTube is a video game. And it's my favorite one.
That's crazy, Bill, because like you've just captured something that, I mean, every person I have on the show, we talk about brain types, that sort of thing. Why do we all love doing this YouTube thing so much? And it is kind of like they've gamified something that can make us money. And so, like, you know, it's insane. And it's so true. I'm obsessed with Death Stranding right now.
Right.
And, you know, it's so true. Like, you do a thing and you level up. You do a thing and you level up. And YouTube has been exactly the same.
Yeah. And again, I didn't know that when I started. When I started, the reason I got into content creation, A, because I was listening to tons of podcasts all the time. But then B, I felt like I was missing out on single player games.
Okay.
Because the only games that I was playing were massively multiplayer games like World of Warcraft or Star Wars, like those games. And the reason that I played those games and they stuck with me is because I had people to talk to while I was playing those games. So I would chat with my friends while I'm playing. But if I'm playing a single player game, I didn't have anybody to chat to. So I thought, you know what, maybe if I do a Twitch stream, I'm going to start streaming on Twitch. And that way, while I'm experiencing the single player game, other people can chat with me about the game at the same time. I think that would be entertaining for me. It wasn't that I ever thought about trying to make money. I was just like, I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's like me in the podcast. I'm like, this is going to be nice for me to talk to other people who do this. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And okay, so you've mentioned your wife a few times. So you're married with a couple of kids?
Yeah, we've got 3 kids, and we have 1 grandson and another grandson on the way.
Crazy. Okay. So you're a little bit further along in the life cycle.
Yeah, I'm an old man. Get off my lawn.
Wow. Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned 2006 you were studying, but then you also mentioned you had a child and a wife.
Yeah.
That must have been pretty tough.
You know, I don't think so. You know, having a wife made it easy. Money was tight. You know, money was really tight, but I was also, like, I used to be in the Army. And one of the cool things about being in the Army is the GI Bill. And so we had money that would come to me from being in the Army that I could use to help try and pay our bills while we were both in college at the same time. So, you know, we lived off really crappy food from, you know, the grocery store where you're buying terrible stuff that, but, you know, I also, you know, my wife is there. So I was able to, you know, she was able to help me make everything easier, and I was able to help her make everything easier. So I don't think it was particularly hard, other than that awful drive that I mentioned at the beginning.
45 minutes. Shit. Yeah. You make a good point here, because I always talk terribly about so we had a similar experience, except it was my wife studying and I was kind of just fart-assing about and trying to figure my life out. So I wasn't earning much money. We weren't in the best part of South Africa. And so I always talk badly about that time in our lives. But like you say, I had my wife there. We were together, and that, you know, strengthened our marriage in a huge way. So
yeah, she makes everything easy. There's no way I would be making any kind of content if she wasn't here.
Yeah, fair point, man. Yeah. I'm sitting in my studio at 9 p.m. while my wife sits in bed and watches a series. Cool. Okay. So, I mean, I think a lot of people who watch this now are going to know kind of who you are and what you've been up to, sort of. I think most people, I specifically know you from the Nerd Nest. I've been checking out that content. And what do you do? Everybody, I've asked every single guest this, and we're all gamers, and everyone just says, I make YouTube. Do you have any interests outside of this? Like hobbies? Do you run? What do you do?
I mean, I'm not allowed to run anymore because I have bad knees and my back is a disaster. And the doctor has basically said, do not run. I just had knee surgery, so I have not been like very active lately. I need to get back. I need to get my ass back on the treadmill, or as I like to call it, the dreadmill. But I don't run on it. I just set it at a high incline, and then I walk uphill while I watch Netflix or whatever. So, yeah, it's much better than running. As far as hobbies, like my wife and I, every single night around, like she has like her projects, like she likes gardening and sewing and like she likes doing crafty stuff. None of that stuff is interesting to me. So usually what happens is I'm up here in my studio working on stuff. And then usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock, she finishes up with whatever project she's working on and she comes up and then we hang out over there on the couch and we watch TV shows or something like something on YouTube, or we like to go to plays and comedy shows and stuff like that. Like just last night, we went and saw To Kill a Mockingbird live at the Utica, which is a city in New York. Live at the Utica. I can't remember the theater there, but oh my God, it was a beautiful theater and the performances were amazing. Like that's the kind of stuff that we like to do, but we also live in the middle of nowhere. So we don't get a lot of a chance to do that. Cause like that was a 2-hour drive.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, that's cool. Sure. Yeah. Well, you're the most cultured guy I've had on the show. That's for sure.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so all right, so you're that part of the world, and at least you have those opportunities. I think when you this like totally misdirected my brain jump to something, but it's something that I'm thinking a lot about lately. Is like you only realize what you've got until you get a taste of not having it. Like, or if you see someone who lives a different life to you, and that's the other reason why I enjoy this podcast, hearing how everyone lives all over the world, and then. You know, I think some people look at me and go, oh, shame, South Africa, postal system, you must really struggle, what have you. But then I hear of guys all over the world, and then I think, I have such a great life, you know. And so you are lucky to have that, you know, if you are into theater and all that. The fact that 2-hour drive to New York, that's not too bad.
It's not terrible. I'm not complaining about it. But you know, last night at midnight, when I know that I have to get up and go to work the next day, I was not real happy about it on the way home. You know, because I was driving, I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. But it was worth it. It was a great show.
Yeah. My wife and I have been thinking about holidays, but. Like I would really like to do one of those cruises that head up to New York. I think they start at the Caribbean and then they go up. But, flights to the States from South Africa are just ridiculous. I saw some guys go to Taiwan for ASUS last week, and they were like, "Yeah, no, you should get in on it. Like next year, ASUS can fly you out." And I'm pretty sure when they see that I'm from South Africa, they're like, "Whoop. Let's just ask someone else," because the flights are crazy.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this, but flying from South Africa to Taiwan is probably cheaper than flying from the U.S. to Taiwan. Because that's that's got to be shorter flight, right?
I don't think so. This is even me living here my whole life. I mean, I could never really afford these things. And now, like, my wife and I are thinking about going on a little holiday, you know. And when we had to, my sister, we got this lucky opportunity. My sister-in-law, her company paid for us to go on the Queen Elizabeth on a Mediterranean cruise. It was insane, like so beautiful. But when I saw the price of the flights and then I compared it to everyone else, it was ridiculous. I think it's because we first got to get up to the Northern Hemisphere and then go across to, not you know, they don't do it like in a right angle, but I just think it is further. Well, I'll fact check.
Fair enough.
A fact check. Aiden was wrong.
Yeah. Bill doesn't know his geography. Noted.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so I was poring over your channel. So, kind of digging in there and seeing what you've been up to over the. But I didn't know you had other channels, so I didn't see anything else by you. So you've got the Nerd Nest. What else do you have?
So Nerd Nest is actually not my first channel. My first channel was called Run Jump Stomp. I don't actually post there anymore. It was also a video game channel.
All right.
And I used to do a lot of Nintendo stuff over there.
Okay.
And then the Nerd Nest actually didn't start out as the Nerd Nest either.
Oh, yeah.
I was watching like the Google press briefing about Google Stadia when they announced it. And I saw that and I said, you know what? That's very interesting. And I want to make a podcast about it. Okay. And so I decided to make a podcast about it. And a friend of mine who also had a podcast at the time, Lloyd, who everybody will know from, because he was my co-host on StadiaCast for a long time. He was in my Twitch chat when I made the decision, and he was like, I said, "Oh, I'm going to make a podcast called StadiaCast," and he said in the chat, he goes, "Oh, I was going to do that, and you beat me to it," or something like that, and I was like, "No, I didn't. You're my co-host," and so he and I sat down and we decided, because I was just on Twitch at the time, and we decided because Google was doing like YouTube integration with Stadia, that we would do the podcast on YouTube. So I made a new channel called StadiaCast, and we sat down and we recorded episodes, and we did that for a while. But then it became clear to me that Google they weren't really ready to commit to the gaming industry. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall. And I was also getting sick of having the same conversation over and over because they weren't doing anything.
They weren't going anywhere. Yeah.
And so, right, they weren't going anywhere. And I got sick of the same conversation. And so I talked to Lloyd and I said, "Hey, man, the channel is doing well." I think at this point we had around 10,000 subscribers or something like that.
Yeah, it was a great idea.
I was... Right. I was very happy with the channel, but I don't want to just talk about Stadia. And I feel like I handcuffed myself by calling it StadiaCast. So what do you think about changing the name? And he said, "Well, what would you change it to?" And the Nerd Nest is the name of the Discord server that I had made for my Nintendo podcast, because my wife was describing what I do in this room and to one of her friends, and she said, "Well, we don't call it a man cave because he doesn't do anything manly in there." And I was like, "Yes, that's true." And her friend said, "You should call that room the Nerd Nest," and that's where the name Nerd Nest came from. So then we changed the name of the podcast, or the YouTube channel, to Nerd Nest, and then we started to try and branch out to talk about things that weren't Google Stadia. And then we had no choice because Google shut down, and we're like, "Well, okay, now I'm glad that we ripped that Band-Aid off before."
Yeah. Okay. Well, then that's weird, because I was going through, and at some point you were, I don't know if I sent you a message or I commented on the video, but I just said, I just said to you on the DMs, I said, like I've done my fair share of logs in the woods, because you were talking in the forest about gaming of some sort, and you said, "Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Games with Bill." Was that just a nickname you gave those sorts of videos, or did you do something like that at some point, or was that an idea that you were floating?
So that's interesting. So what we were doing is I didn't understand YouTube very well at that point. And what we were doing the StadiaCast podcast, and I can't remember if we had already rebranded to Nerd Nest, but I wanted to bring another show on. And so I had a solo podcast that I had been doing for a long time called, originally it was called Run Jump Stomp. And then I renamed it to, not that, but you'll.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you'll find it on that page. I renamed it to Games with Bill.
The process of how things changed. Okay.
Or actually, okay, I remembered this wrong. Okay. Let me rephrase this. Yeah. So the process of how things changed. It started out as Nintendo Switchcraft. And that podcast, Nintendo Switchcraft, was a solo show 3 times a week. I would sit down and record it live on my Twitch channel. Eventually, I left Twitch behind. And then I decided, when I got sick of talking about Nintendo, the same stuff all the time, I got tired of it. I said, okay, well, I'm going to rename it Games with Bill because that's generic. So then I made it Games with Bill for a while, but then I ended up rebranding it as Nerd Nest again. Yes. Listen, if anybody out there is thinking about making a podcast, the name of your podcast does not matter. It's a living thing that will change over time. And I can see that old thing. How many years ago is that?
This one.
2 years ago.
That's just 2 years. Yeah. The channel goes much further back than that.
It does. It goes all the way back to 2019, I think, is when I started this channel.
Yes. So your journey goes back even further than the existence of this channel.
Yeah, I had another channel called Run, Jump, Stomp.
All right. So, I mean, I just wanted to point that out because, a lot of people who've watched this are content creators. And like, I like to just always point out, like, especially when I chatted to Rudy, who both him and I've been on the platform, and it sounds like you probably have as well, about 7 years. And like, I said to you, sure, at least you've stuck to one thing. And you're like, no, Aidan, I've jumped around. I'm like, well, Bill, I've done drones, vlogs, cameras, like film production, all sorts of things. So, you have been very good at hacking the niche, like the niches within the niche, if I can put it that way. Like, like now you're more on the Steamdeck stuff. They've been doing a lot of like news related stuff lately. So you're kind of hacking the system as you go along. And I think that's brilliant.
I will say that if I could go back in time and start over, I probably wouldn't do, like, if I was just thinking about YouTube as the video game and I want to get the highest score possible, I probably wouldn't do news stuff. News stuff is very easy to make content because there's always something to talk about. But those videos, like, they always die fast. Like, it's like, okay, there's a huge spike in views, but then ain't nobody watching it the next week. So I wish that the thing that I feel like I'm bad at is making that evergreen content that will be just as useful in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years as it is on that first day. And that's the thing that I feel like is my weakest point, which is why I made another channel called Bill Fairchild, where it's just me talking about content creation, because that's more evergreen content. Although, it's hard for me to find time to make videos for that channel because I'm always making videos for my Nerd Nest channel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the issue now is this is great. I mean, and this kind of content works so well. And like you say, it does have an evergreen perspective to it. And like I say, you really, like, looking at this content, this is the first time I'm seeing it. Looking at this content, you're hacking the stuff that's already happening into something that's going to work. Wow. Just looking at this now, I feel like this could really go big for you. But it's difficult dividing your focus, man.
I just got to find more time.
Pause, because I talk about a lot on the channel how I was diagnosed with ADHD last year at, how old am I? 43 years old, 44 years old. And that's been a bit of a challenge. And now even more so realizing, like, because what happens when you diagnose with something like that? I know, like, it can be fairly controversial depending who you're talking to, but it's like your whole life flashes before your eyes. And then the thing of how I've constantly shifted focus throughout my life. And I mean, like I said to you, like, the focus on my channel has been so varied. And then, like, every 6 months, I'm like, why am I struggling? Why am I struggling? That's been my life, like, constantly, like, changing focus and then wondering why I'm not succeeding. So I always take a very big pause if I ever decide. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry. Well, for those of you who are watching, I'm in New York, he's in South Africa. There's a huge delay between us, which is why we keep interrupting each other. Or maybe I'm just a rude jerk. But here's the thing that it jumps into my mind when you talk about that diagnosis. I feel like it's almost like after Peter Parker gets bit by the spider and he's looking through the glasses and he's like, what the, and he takes them off and everything's suddenly clear. It's like you get that diagnosis and you look back at all of the decisions that you made and you're like, oh, they make sense now. Now I get why I did those things. And I've not been diagnosed with ADHD, and I don't know. I have no suspicion whether or not I have ADHD, but I do have a hard time. Like I get an idea and I get really excited about that idea and I start working on that idea. And then that idea starts to come to fruition and I get bored with it, and just to relate it to podcasting and, Nintendo Switchcraft. I looked at the Nintendo Switch and I said, that's going to be a big deal. I'm going to make a podcast about it. I'm going to record 3 times a week live on Twitch. That's a lot of work. That's a huge commitment. And I did that for a really long time, but then I got bored. And I was like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I want to talk about something else. I'll talk about Google Stadia. Awesome. Okay, I got bored talking about Google Stadia. I'll talk about the Steamdeck. Awesome. And I get excited and I get going on the idea, and then I get bored of it. And I'm like, okay, what else can I talk about?
Yeah.
Let's make videos about videos or about video making. That's the same thing. I got bored of the thing and I started talking about something else. And it's not that I don't like talking about the Steam Deck, but I feel like sometimes I run out of ideas for what I can talk about. So every once in a while, I get the idea that I should do other stuff. And maybe that has something to do with ADHD. Who knows?
Maybe. I mean, what you're describing is very much like what my life has been like. And that's why... So I gave myself an ultimatum. It's weird how it all just happened kind of at the same time. Like I gave myself this ultimatum of, okay, dude, you need to stop effing around. Like either this YouTube thing is going to succeed. You've spent, like at that point, it was 5 years on this platform. It's gone nowhere. It's short bursts of success. But at that point, like before I started the retro gaming, I think I was at like 4,000 subscribers. So I mustn't underplay the amount of growth I got from making this decision, and it's done well. And now what I do is I just hack my brain into going, okay, if I lose interest, there's other things within the same niche, and just keep. So that's why you seem to have been very good at managing yourself, and I guess getting older, you just learn how to deal with yourself. But I think. I just take great pause if I ever have to, because I do it every week, every single week. I think I mentioned to the guy from RH Stubbs, I mentioned something like I was busy pondering the podcast. I mean, my podcast hasn't even gained traction yet, and I was like, I should do this thing on the podcast, and it was like completely different to what I'm doing now. So, yeah, I have to manage that on a weekly basis.
Yeah, the other thing that, you mentioned your numbers, like you were at 4,000 or whatever. And this is a trap that I feel like a lot of content creators, myself included, run into, where you look at how you're doing now and you're like, oh, I thought I would be doing better. Or I posted a video and it didn't get as many views as I thought. But if I could go back and say to myself, you're going to post a video and in less than 24 hours, it's going to have 40,000 people who will have watched it. I would have been like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And then today that was yesterday. And, I posted a video and it had 40,000 views on it. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. Yes, if I post a video tomorrow and it only gets 30,000 views, I'm going to be disappointed, and I shouldn't be, because 30,000 people watched a thing that I created. That should be worth celebrating, but we forget where we were. And that's just such a dangerous thing.
Yeah, we really do. I suppose, especially if you are experiencing, like I'm not experiencing, I wouldn't say the word rapid growth, but I'm experiencing growth, like steady growth. And so you could so quickly forget, because it was just the other day we did a 10,000 subscriber celebration. Now 10,000 subscribers sounds like such a low number. I'm like, oh, that's terrible. It's just like, you've got to remember and you've got to celebrate those moments. I pushed, he didn't do it because of me, but I was like moaning at Russ when he was on my channel to celebrate. I think he was heading towards, was it 300,000 or 400,000? But I said, dude, you got to do something. Have a fun little celebration, because you got to celebrate those moments. Okay?
Yeah, and he just hit 500,000, and we were on the Nerd Nest podcast, and I paused the podcast for a second, and I said, hey man, just wanted to say congrats on 500,000. And you know what he said? He goes, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at celebrating, and he's right. But I think that's a thing. If you have the YouTube bug of trying to, I think that people who are attracted to making videos for other people, they're almost always bad at celebrating stuff, because they're always thinking about what's difficult. The next thing I can do. And it's a rough trap to be in. Not that I'm complaining, but it's a thing that it's something that goes on up here that I think is hard to put your hands around.
Yes. And I do get nervous when people say to me, like, they will set goals for themselves that are just a little bit out of reach. And I understand the motivation behind that. I want to push myself so that I'm constantly striving to be better and to go further and all that kind of thing. But I just don't think it's healthy. I could.
Well, when you say goals, do you mean like number goals?
Yes. So for instance, I do hit 20,000 now on a more regular basis than I used to, of views on a video. So I could set that as my goal. But my actual baseline, within about 2 days, my video will hit between 2,000 and 2,500 views. That's my actual baseline. But I could, if I wanted, to say, Aiden, you've got to hit 20K for every video now. And then it would, for a while, push me to be better. But then over time, it would just wear me out, because eventually I'll be like, I'm getting nowhere, because then by the time you're hitting 20,000 on a regular basis, you're like, okay, no, Aiden, it's got to be 40,000. And then you never feel like you're getting anywhere. I think it's a dangerous trap.
There was a video you had on screen a little bit ago that I talk about this exact thing, about like somebody who complains about getting 10,000 views. Yes. And I said, who would complain about getting 10,000 views? Somebody who just had 20,000 views. And then the reason is because you've got this mountain, this mountain in front of you. And every time you get to the peak, you get up to the top of the mountain and you're like, yes, it is time for me to celebrate. I did it. And then you look off into the distance and there's another taller mountain over there. And you're like, well, shoot, I guess I got to keep going. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that I feel like happens to content creators, which is why numbered goals, I feel like, are terrible. Instead, I feel like the goal should be to get better at this, get better at that, drive to make better content, not because it will get you more views. It usually will. But because it's just a mental health, it's healthier to have that kind of goal than it will be to get X number of views on a video after a week or something. But it's really hard to get those numbers out of your head. I struggle with that.
Yeah, I think of his username was Matt H, but I'm probably going to have him on the podcast soon, and I'll put his name on the screen. But he is doing really, really well. He's the chap who's doing really cinematic retro gaming videos. He just did a video on the RGB 30.
Oh, yeah, I've seen his stuff.
Yes.
Gorgeous.
And he is just focused on the craft. He's focused on, like, whenever I speak to him, he's like, yeah, I'm working on my B-roll table now, or yeah, I'm like figuring out which light, or like I'm working on a more easy to do set up so that my color grading, so like he's just focused on the craft. And at first I was like, dude, you're going about it the wrong, my first reaction was, you're going about it the wrong way. But he's doing really well and he's happy. Like he, you know, I don't get the sense from him that he's like me, who's like completely neurotic all the time because he's got to make another video. He's just like, I'll make it when I make it, and when I make it, it'll be perfect. You know, that's his like vibe, you know. And he's
but his stuff also feels very evergreen.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it'll be just as useful in 6 months as it was when it first came out.
Yeah, definitely. What is it? It's Matt H. What is his?
I think it is Matt H, because I've talked to him about lighting, because I saw his video and I was like, this is the most beautiful video I've ever seen. Yeah. How did you do this? And then he sent me like a little video of how he did it. And I was like, okay, that's something I might be able to do someday. I can't do it now because I just don't have the room in this room, but it was just gorgeous. Like his videos are amazing.
I mean, I've been in filmmaking for a long time, and technically I could do what he does, but I don't think I could. Like he's just the level of attention to detail. I mean, look at that lighting, like the color grading. He's made sure that the highlights aren't clipping. It's crazy. That, I mean, that's just beautiful. And that's not even like the main B-roll. Like that's halfway through the video.
Yeah, that's not even the best one. Like, oh yeah, this stuff right here is just gorgeous.
Yeah, I know I probably can't share everything, but I know he's going to be working on a project for a bigger YouTuber later in the year. He's going to be doing B-roll for them. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, so just to say, you know, he's focused on the craft, and I think that's the way to go. A turning point for me as well, like in this YouTube journey, when I set an ultimatum. I was like, Aiden, you either need to succeed within 12 months or get off the platform. And the huge shift was enjoying making videos rather than enjoying the topic. So like I got into retro gaming because I loved it. Like I bought one of the devices and I thought it was great. But also it was kind of like, I love making videos. I know how to make videos now. I'm just going to pick this topic because I know it's going to do well. And let's just enjoy making videos. And that was the huge turning point for me, because I'm not really focused. As much as I love the content, if I have to change tomorrow, it won't bother me because I just love this. I love putting on the camera, putting on the lights, and just doing a thing, you know.
Yeah, there's something very relaxing about getting things set up and torn down, and like thinking to yourself, okay, I've got my camera here. I need to put this light over here, throw that at 5,600 Kelvin. I've got this other light over here, throw that at 3,200 Kelvin. You know, like all of that stuff that I've learned about video creation over time.
Cool.
I'm much more interested in that than I am in video games. I still like video games. I still play video games, but the act of making a video is more fun than playing a game to me.
Yes. Yeah. I so agree, man. Because I don't know if you know my journey, but I'm kind of doing everything backwards, because through varsity and then heading into my career and just doing all sorts of things, I never really did much gaming at all. So now that I've got the Steamdeck, there's like literally just pick a game. I've never heard of it or played it. So it's just like a whole new world to me. But I know that curve is going to reach an end. So whether it's a year, 2 years, I'm going to reach an end of the Steamdeck. Like, whoa, it's amazing. I'm playing every game. And eventually I'm just going to get bored and I won't play that much anymore. But what will be left is actually creating content. So, yeah. So, and that's what's so great about this is we get to like I've said hack many times now in this episode, but we get to take these passions that we have, and it's still within the same niche, and still be successful at something and make money and keep everyone happy in our lives. Well, I do want to say that's something that popped up is like your backdrop and the look of your video. If you scroll through your timeline, and I'm sure I think Bill Fairchild is newer, but it's evolved and gotten more cinematic over time. So my first impression of you wasn't that, it was this. And like, I was like, wow, this guy really knows his shit. So yeah, you've really kind of tweaked it, and you like, there's not a lot of people who do the whole, like, well, it is like the nerd nest with the shelves and the whole thing going on in the background, and do it well. So that's a compliment.
I'll take it as such. I think that, like, when I started, you always get people who feel like gear is going to make my content better, and gear will make it more fun to make your content, I think. But when I started, I was using a Samsung Meteor mic that I got for $40, and the crappiest webcam on the planet. Like, it wasn't even the newest Logitech webcam back when I started. It was like an old one that I had gotten used or something, and like, it was just me, and I didn't have this room. Like, it was me in my wife's sewing room, because we did not, like, this was an attic, because I'm literally a guy in his attic. Yeah. So I was in her sewing room, and I would put up a green cloth behind me, and then I would play video games. And then eventually we had saved up enough money through through the Master Teacher Program, which I used to be a part of. It's a thing where you can do it for 4 years. And we used the money to renovate the attic and put an extra bedroom up here. And when we were doing that, I said, well, there's a lot of times where I'm recording and you want to sew, but you can't sew because sewing is loud and I'm recording. Or there's lots of times where I want to record and you're sewing, but we can't do that at the same time. So why don't we build a room where I can get out of your way, so that we can both do the things that we want to do at the same time without interfering with each other's hobbies? And she said yes, which, because that's a very expensive proposal, you know? And so we ended up building this room, and we got another bedroom across the hall from this. But we got, like, this is a 12 by 12 studio that, like, it came over time. This room, like, it all started on a webcam and a crappy microphone, and the gear hasn't really changed the content. It just changed how I make the content, because it still comes down to me sitting down and just talking to a camera or talking to a microphone for a little bit, and then throwing some stuff on top.
Yeah. Well done. Yeah, I'm also very lucky to.
What about you? Like, what did you start with for gear? Did you start with fancy gear because you already studied that stuff, or did you start with crap like me?
Crap. Yeah, I distinctly remember I was like, I said to my wife, I need this cell phone because it has a decent camera, and it wasn't a decent camera. It was a Sony Xperia, but it had, like, they put a good camera on the front and the back so you could vlog, because I was like, I'm going to be a vlogger. It was like when Casey Neistat was in his heyday. And so that's how I started. I was like, cool, just talk to the cat. It's so embarrassing. I see clips on my Google Photos sometimes, and I just delete them because it's so embarrassing.
But
that's how I started.
I hate my old stuff.
Yeah,
I hate all my old stuff. And it's not that it was necessarily bad. It's just that it looks bad.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to get some of it to play, but it's not playing.
The old stuff?
Yeah, I'm trying. If you put
of yours or old stuff of mine?
Yours. I want you to be embarrassed, not me.
Oh, okay.
Oh gosh, I know.
Well, I could delete it, but I haven't.
Exactly. Yes, I will. The advice, because I was so all over the place, like my brain on a YouTube channel. A friend of mine, it's weird, like, just telling you now of how all these little pieces came together. I was chatting to a friend in Dubai, and he said to me, unlist all the videos that have nothing to do with gaming. I left a few. There's a few there. There's like one song that I did once. I did a few little camera videos that did really, really well. So, well, not really well in light of my new videos, not really, really well, but they did well. So I left those. and then I just started afresh. So none of those crappy videos are actually there anymore.
All my crappy videos are still there. I remember I think one of the first ones I had uploaded to YouTube, I was playing, I think I was playing Guild Wars 2 on a Steam controller. And
I see. So the audio.
I didn't know anything about audio, but the live stream, I was just playing this game, and I'm sitting there talking, and nobody can hear anything that I'm saying because I didn't understand how audio worked in this stuff. So I'm like blah 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 blah, and nobody can hear me.
All right, I want to shift gears a little bit in terms of. The whole scene that I'm in, and you know Russ well, is the retro gaming scene. I know you're like most of your content lately has been about the Steamdeck, but do you own any of these retro consoles?
Yeah, I just made a video about this one recently, which is the the Ambernick RG35 XXSP.
Wonderful name.
Rolls right off the tongue. It is. This thing's very cool. I think that I have the Ambernick RG Cube on my couch over there. Okay. Like I have a box. I don't know what's in the box yet. I think it might be that. Okay. So I have this. I have the Miu Mini Plus. I had bought the Pocket Go a couple of years back, and then another one that was it was like the Pocket Go, but a little bit bigger. And most of the time, the videos that I make about these things, they don't do very well. Like my audience doesn't care as much about it, but I enjoy this stuff a lot. So I still make those videos.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then that's, like we said, if you're enjoying it, people will, there you go. Ambernick SP.
Yeah, this thing is cool. I love this thing. This is my new favorite.
Sure. Yeah, I asked for the silver just because it's going to look like a real SP. But there's your SP video. So you're getting sucked into our world, like without knowing.
I am. And
22,000 views. That's good. That's not as bad as
it's way better than I thought that one was going to perform. Like I did not think that one would perform very well because I've done other retro stuff. Like I did a video about the Atari, the Atari 2600 Plus.
Yeah, but there just wasn't an interest in that, was there?
Nobody watched that.
I mean, yeah.
Nobody cared. I loved it because I grew up on the Atari 2600. That was my first system that I saved. You just scrolled past it.
Ooh, it is so pretty. Oh.
Yeah, it's in the second column. Next video up. There it is, right there. I
enjoy that.
It is. It's a gorgeous system, and like I had a lot of nostalgia for it.
That is like I unlocked a memory from doing all this. I was like, I had an NES growing up, and then I suddenly remembered I had an uncle who was super into tech, and like there weren't a lot of these around, and he had an Atari. Which is this, the 2600? This is what he had.
Yeah, that's the 2600.
Beautiful. Sure, crazy. Yeah.
And, you talked about my shelves before. The shelves behind me contain all old consoles and stuff. So, like, I've got like the Power Glove.
There's a GameCube there.
Like, right here's the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then over here's the Atari. Oh, no. Yes. The Atari's right here. I got two Ataris. I got the original and then the little mini one up there. And then, there's the GameCube, and then the 5200 is right there. But I got a bunch of that stuff because I love old technology. I think old technology is really cool. You always see guys that have like a wall of games behind them, but I like the hardware. I think the hardware is much cooler than the games themselves.
Well, then you'll fit right in the retro community, because I think that's what everyone loves so much. Like I say this a lot, but I do think this is faddish. I think this crazy, like a new device every 2 weeks is going to die down eventually. It can't just keep going forever. But I think that's what everyone's enjoying about it so much, is that we're getting all this, like these companies that are trying to replicate that nostalgia in new tech. And it's just so fun. Like, I love it.
I think that might be why the SP is so damn popular, because it has that exact same form factor outside of being a little bit thicker and a little bit different size of the GBA SP, which was a great system. But like, this has Nintendo, good. Like it has my NES games, my Super NES games, my Genesis games. I love this stuff. I think it's so fun to go back to your old games.
Yeah. No, I definitely think you should intersperse your content with some of this retro stuff, because I can see like the glint in your eye. You're enjoying it.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite right now that you're playing a bunch?
Device. I'm kind of in between favorites right now. Let's see. I've actually got a favorite shelf over here. What have I got? Okay, I got some original hardware. I really like the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. I've been using the Anbernic RGB30, which all the guys in my scene just loved. Not Anbernic, the Power Kitty. That's one with the square screen.
Oh, the Power Kitty. That's the one with the square screen. It's really good for arcade games.
Yeah, which has inspired the Cube. And I do think the Cube is going to replace my RGB30 when it arrives. But yeah, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. I really love this little one. Something special about it.
So let me ask you a question. You get all these little handheld devices. I am struggling to deal with like all the crap that I have. Where do you put it all? Like, I know Russ,
I should
like we were talking about Russ, and he's got like those little shelves that his wife ended up picking up for him. Like, I have all these different handhelds and stuff, and I'm like, I don't have a place for all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you seem to have more stuff than me at the back there, but that's all just old cool stuff of yours, isn't it? Like just
most of this stuff is just decoration. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have as many as you would think. I bought two 1200, so 1200 millimeter, 1.2 meter shelves, and I've managed to fit, so there's one here and one against the wall. So I've managed to double it up. And that's actually, I didn't do it. That's half of my devices. So yeah, that's all just shelves. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to comment about your studio. I am very lucky in that we got this big house that was all dilapidated for a steal, and we've been fixing it up slowly.
That's awesome.
In the front of the house, there's this huge room that we never use because it's right in the front of the house. And there's just like, it gets super cold in the winter. But it's now my studio, and it's like beautiful. I've got a pitch roof, like this. It's great for sound. It's just wonderful. So I've got a lot of space here. So I'm just lucky.
Yeah. I also, cause I'm in an attic, you can see the ceiling right here behind me. You know, because it's a slanted ceiling. It is good for the sound. It's terrible for lights because I bought a big light with one of those big soft boxes, and I put it up in here, and I was like, this is way too big, and I just didn't have any place for it. So I ended up getting rid of it and sticking with my LED panels.
Yes. They're very expensive, but there are LED soft boxes now, but they're like this thin by Aperture. So, yeah.
Yes, I saw a Peter McKinnon video where he was talking about one that he had, and I added it to my wish list, but it's $500, and I'm like,
that's the trouble with watching Peter McKinnon.
I can't spend $500 on it
because, like, I've been down that road so many times with that guy. I'm like, I have to have this, and then I look it up. Either it's not in South Africa, you can't get it here, or it's just ridiculously expensive.
Gear is very, very expensive, and I think too many people think that they can't start until they get the best gear.
Well, I know I've mentioned Russ a few times in this video, but he, up until like last month, has been using a phone as his top-down camera. I mean, the dude has 500,000 subscribers, and he's been using a phone as his top-down camera. It's crazy. Like, when he was at about 350, he said, I get a kick out of it. I want to see how far I can get until I have to change. Your gear really isn't the main focus.
It isn't. Although I will say a phone is a fantastic top-down camera because they're so light, and you don't get a good bokeh on a phone, but a top-down camera, you don't need a good bokeh. Like, it's a waste. So it's kind of a waste. There's another YouTuber, Spawn Point. He's got 2 eyes in his name. It's Spawn Wave. It's Spawn Point. It's a different guy. He does a lot of PlayStation focused stuff. His entire channel, everything is filmed on an iPhone. He does it all on an iPhone, and it's a massive channel, very, very successful. And everything looks great.
This is the thing.
His videos are very, very nice looking.
I mean, my wife got one of those new iPhones. It's got the cinematic mode and the whole thing. And it's just like, often I'll be like, like that cruise and I've got my camera and I'm like taking photos with my fancy camera. And she's like, look, and it's way better than what I did, I'm like, what is the point of me?
I bring we're currently talking, I'm on my Sony A6700, which is a pretty nice camera. It just came out last year. It's got the Tamron 17 to 70 millimeter lens on it. And I like, when we're doing family stuff, I'm like, I like photography. I like composing a shot, and I take pictures with it. And a lot of times I get really good pictures that look awesome, but sometimes I get real stinkers. And if you just use your phone, almost every picture is good. It's hard to get bad pictures with the phone because the software is just so smart about making it easy for you.
It is mental. I mean, in the like professional scene, like I always say to people, it's physics. Like you can't make the sensor bigger in the iPhone. And I understand like stacking of pixels and all that sort of thing. But like at the end of the day, if you've got a huge sensor in low light, you are going to be the better person in that situation. But yeah, it is getting harder and harder to compete with that, or justify it, should I say.
But the thing is I don't feel like it needs a justification, because the act of, at least for me, of sitting there and saying, all right, well, I want to do like maybe a 1.4 or a 2.8 or, whatever. And then, dialing that in and throwing an ND filter on the end, like all of that stuff, that is just as important to the act of taking a picture as the end result, in my opinion, because that's where the fun is. It's a video game.
Yeah. We brought it full circle, and it is, it's because if you're not enjoying that's why I started doing film photography. Actually, my whole Europe trip is film photos, and I'm pretty sure because I love it so much, like I love things like that. Like I was really into craft beer because I love the labels and how you can get a different beer from all different places in the world and all that sort of thing. And film is like that. Like I can get a special film stock from like some film that they found in some warehouse in New York, and then they shipped it to somewhere in Europe, and they made this, like I love that kind of thing. And I'm pretty sure that is what made my photos better, because I was just like, this is special. I need to take special care and take special photos, So you were 100% right. No.
It's funny. I brought up Peter McKinnon. I want to bring him up again. He just put out a video recently where he found some infrared film, and he took some pictures with it, and like the pictures are gorgeous. They're not edited. Like he didn't bring them into Photoshop or whatever and change things, but it looks very striking. And he talked about how he had spent a lot of time taking these pictures, and he doesn't want to edit them to make them look better. He wants to capture it in the camera. And that's the way I feel about it. Although I don't know that I could commit to film, because I would hate to, you went to Europe, you said, on vacation. I couldn't imagine going there and being like, okay, taking my picture, and then looking at the picture afterwards, and it's like, it's out of focus or something, or I screwed something up. I would be so disappointed that I don't get to keep that memory. I have to hold on to the memory up here instead of being able to look at it and be reminded of it.
Yeah. Now, there was a lot of photo taking before I went to Europe, and I trialed those cameras, but then just thinking about it now. One of those cameras failed just as I got back to South Africa. So I got lucky. Because the problem is with film photography, you're using secondhand cameras that have been around like since the 60s or 70s. So you are taking a risk now that you say it. Anyway, moving on. All right, so this is a topic that I know will trigger you, is the Steam Deck.
Okay.
You've made lots of content about the Steam Deck. I'm just like new to it. I'm literally just a consumer right now. I set out to figure everything out. I was going to make videos and I'm like, screw this. I'm just going to enjoy it because it's just amazing. And I actually watched your video that you said... It's a new video that you released about the Steam Deck versus everything, and you were like the ROG Ally X and the Claw. You were talking about all those things. Like, you understand all that way more than I do. So, like, is the Steam Deck, like, how long are the legs for the Steam Deck? Do you think like the guys are catching up? Because sorry, I'm just summarizing your video. Like, you mentioned how they're just putting a huge battery on the back. And that is a good solution to sort of the typical mobile Windows problem.
So
do you think the Steam Deck's under threat at all?
Well, the thing is, so first off, a lot of people clicked on that video and then left comments saying that I was wrong without watching the video. Because they get, like, people somehow get defensive about the thing that they like a lot. But the thing is I like the Steam Deck. I also like the ROG Ally. I'm very excited for the ROG Ally X. MSI, I think that, they've got a tough hill to climb because they went with Intel. The new chips, like they did it on Meteor Lake, and now it's going to be a Lunar Lake chipset. And if the things that Intel are saying about the Lunar Lake chipset are true, then the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus, like, that might actually be a contender. But the thing is that it's different. It's a different kind of competition where you look at Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo, they're competitors in the way that if I buy into one of those, I am locked into their ecosystems. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing.
Yes.
Because I own a PlayStation 5, an Xbox Series X, and a Nintendo Switch. I have access to all of those ecosystems. I understand not everybody does, but no matter which one you buy, there's lots of games that you can play in that ecosystem. The competition when it comes to handheld PCs, I feel like is a different story, but people don't quite understand that it's a different story. And the reason why it's a different story is because you are not locked to an ecosystem. With the Steam Deck, you are locked a little bit more than with the others because you can't necessarily play games from the Epic Game Store or GOG as easily as you can on Steam. And there's definitely going to be some games that don't work because of anti-cheat or whatever. So when you look at all of the different handheld PCs, the Steam Deck is the one that feels the most console-like, which is probably the reason I like it the most, because I'm at heart a console guy. But all of these systems, they'll play the same games. And so the tribal nonsense where people are like, oh, this one's bad and this one's good, and they can't both be good. In the video that I posted that you mentioned, I said it feels like Asus and MSI are failing. And the reason that I said that Asus feels like they're failing is because of the warranty stuff that's surrounding them. Like, anytime I post a video about the ROG Ally, it's like I get a bunch of comments. I'm never going to use this because of the Gamers Nexus warranty stuff that came out about Asus. And that's a perfectly valid response, that people would not want to invest hundreds of dollars into a system from a company who regularly, now it seems like regularly, kind of screws people over through like warranty stuff. So I can understand that reaction. And then the reason that I said that the MSI thing felt like a failure, yes, the first one came out and the frame rates weren't great and the battery life wasn't great. but they only waited 3 months to announce the replacement. And that makes the customer feel like, you knew that you were going to do this, so you just tricked us. And that doesn't feel good. And so when I put out this video that said, Steamdeck competitors seem like they're failing or something, I can't remember the exact title. I wasn't talking about the hardware. I was talking about everything that's happening around those things, because I do think that you have two options, and I'm talking for a really long time, so I apologize, but you have two options. You have
told you I'd trigger you.
You have the ability to go with an efficient chip, or you can back up a less efficient chip with a big ass battery. And what it seems like both MSI and Asus are like, we can't match in terms of efficiency, so we're going to put a big ass battery in it. And that is a valid way to try and compete with the Steam Deck.
Yes.
And I hope that it works. And this is what I said in the video. I said, I hope that it works, because if it works, then that's more competition for Valve. And that means that they have to innovate faster. And I like that idea.
Yes. So we all win.
Everybody wins. But too many people, they get into that tribalistic mentality that is still left over from the console wars. And because my title said that, what was the title? It's right on your screen, but it's small.
Steam Deck competitors seem defeated. Steam competitors.
Yeah. So I said that they seem.
It's a very well worded thing.
Right. They seem like they're defeated. I don't think that they are defeated, but they seem like they are. And a lot of people saw that and they said, oh, this guy hates Asus and MSI. No, if you watch the whole video, I say that I want them to succeed, but they don't watch the whole video. They just comment.
Yeah. Yes, it was a very well crafted. I loved your little like sick burns on each manufacturer as you went along. That was quite funny.
I usually don't do that kind of thing.
You know, you're like, I enjoyed it. I loved it. It's almost a very, like you created the perfect storm, because those guys in those scenes are quite sensitive. And so when you say those things, I think it does kind of prick a little nerve. But it was a very well crafted video, because for someone like me who, I just know the highlights. I know like the ROG Ally, nice and powerful, but battery life and, like you mentioned, warranty. And then I knew the Claw had just overall issues. I was a bit disappointed to hear when you said that they have released the new one already, because I felt like all they needed to do was work on the existing one. And I'm sure they could have done something with it. But instead of that, maybe there's something behind the scenes. Maybe, you know, they were like trying and they realized this is just flogging a dead horse. Let's move on.
I think it reminds me of Apple, when Apple was like trying, like they were like, okay, Intel, we switched over to Intel from our PowerPC stuff. And come on, Intel, we're waiting for the new chips. And the new chips from Intel just kept getting delayed. And Apple was finally, they just said, well, screw it. We're just gonna make our own chips, because they're a big enough company that they can do that.
Don't F with Apple.
Right. So they just said, all right, we're going to make the M series chips. And because we control the store, we can force all of our developers to make M series, like make their apps work on our new chips. Yeah. And it worked. And I feel like
had the power.
MSI, I think, you know, they got into bed with Intel. I think all of their stuff is on Intel chips. And they were like, okay. Well, we've got these Lunar Lake chipsets, which are supposed to be really great. So what are we going to use? And Intel said, well, here's a bunch of Meteor Lake chips that aren't super efficient and aren't really going to help you out. But here you go. They're real cheap. And I feel, and this is just me speculating, I feel like MSI said, okay, well, we'll release that, and then we'll release the Lunar Lake ones afterwards. And I just think that it makes customers feel bad for spending money when you announce it 3 months after.
No, I think you're 100% right. Usually it just does always boil down to numbers. Well, I wanted to just switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about your YouTube life again. And because you said that you're a teacher.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have like a full-on day job.
Yeah, I do.
Like I have a business and I'm slowly but surely like figuring out ways to like shuffle my time over and trying to make this more full-time as I move forward. But like, how are you managing all of that?
Reps, doing it a lot. So when I mentioned Nintendo Switchcraft before, the way that I did that show is I did it live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I would come home from work. I would turn on my camera, hit go live on Twitch, and then I would find Nintendo stories. And I would just chat with the people who were there watching. And I would say, okay, I've got the stories that I want to talk about today. I would I'm already live, and I would just hit record. And then I would just start talking and getting my ideas out of my head and just into the microphone. And because I did it live, there was there was no editing to do. So it didn't take very long. So I had I had the ability to spit out a new episode in an hour. And so when I was doing that, it was roughly 3 or 4 hours a week is how much time I was spending on it, which is not very much.
Yeah.
But it was enough because Nintendo stuff was very popular at the time that people started like following me. And then when I started doing StadiaCast, I did it essentially the same way. It was live, except instead of on Twitch, it was on YouTube. And instead of just being me, it was somebody else as well. So me and my buddy Lloyd we would just chat. We would gather news stories throughout the week. And then on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m., we would sit down, turn on the cameras, talk to each other. And then the podcast was done. When I started doing YouTube stuff, that was on YouTube, but I wasn't recording videos. I was not editing anything. Nothing was edited. Everything was just off the top of my head. When I started making videos, I found I enjoyed that process so much more than sitting down and just getting it out. Because I like the craft of making a video, even if I don't always do it. I just try and I'm just always working. I think that's how I do it, is I'm always working. Even when I'm not sitting here, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm always thinking about it all the time. I didn't know that until now.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about how you started, because I can see that in the Nerd Nest. I actually didn't put that in the talking points that I sent you, but we must talk about Nerd Nest. And when I watch the episodes with the guys, I can see that quick thinking, quick on your feet. There's a sharpness to you there that I don't see in a lot of guys that do what you do.
I think that probably comes from managing a room full of teenagers that don't want to be there for 20 years. You know, not that they don't enjoy the class that I teach, or some do, some don't, and that's fine.
Yes,
but I mean, let's be honest. If I had the choice between going to work or not going to work, even though I love my job, I would not go to work because I love laying around and not doing anything more. You know what I mean? And so I totally get when the kids are like, I don't want to do this work today. Yeah, I get it. We don't want to do it, but we're going to do it anyway. And just managing, somewhere between, 18 and, 28 kids or whatever in a classroom, it forces you to be able to think quickly and be able to switch gears quickly.
Yeah.
And so I practice that all day long, and then I come home.
Yeah.
And when I sit down and I'm recording a podcast with somebody, I feel like one of the things that I'm good at when it comes to podcasting is not necessarily controlling a conversation, but knowing when it's a good point to transition from one part of the conversation to another.
Yes.
I think that's one of the strengths that I have.
That's a gift. Yeah, no, for sure. And you definitely have that. That's what I'm trying to say. And you've got that sort of like, because I don't have no experience of multiple people. I actually just spoke to someone today who's going to do an episode with me where we're going to do like maybe 3 or 4 guys. And I'm a bit nervous about that because like watching you, I think to myself, sure, that's quite a bit to have going on all at the same. I mean, just chatting to you and sharing the screen, I'm like, oh, I've got to listen to Bill and do a thing. Like it's crazy. So yeah.
I have to admit, sometimes they're like somebody will make a comment on one of the videos and they'll say something and I'll be like, what in the hell are they talking about? I don't remember this at all. And it's probably because somebody else said something and I was busy like bringing up a game to put on screen so that people could see it. There are things that I miss.
And you're like,
oh yeah, that's, okay. Oh yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. Sonic. Oh, here's Sonic.
Good times. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, so how did it evolve into what it is now? There's about 3 guys on permanent rotation on the podcast. And then I saw there was a new guy that popped in the other day, but he hadn't been around for a while. Mm-hmm. So how did that all come to be?
So there was a Discord channel that a bunch of people who made Steamdeck content got invited to. And we were in there and we were kind of chatting. And I had kind of stopped doing games with Bill. And I was like, I want to talk about stuff that's not just, again, I got bored. I wanted to talk about stuff that wasn't just Steamdeck.
Don't want to.
So I decided, I was like, you know what, maybe I'll make a podcast and I'll just call it the Nerd Nest Podcast because I have the name already. But do I want to do a solo show? I don't really want to do a show by myself because if I'm doing a show by myself, then I'm going to edit it. I'm going to edit it and turn it into a video instead of having it just be off the cuff. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I was like, well, who can I talk to? Well, we were having like these conversations about content creation and tech and video games and stuff in that Discord.
Yes.
And so I sent messages to the guys who I thought their content that I don't want to say that I enjoyed the most, but the content that I was watching the most. And I was like, I was watching a lot of Carrie's stuff. He's the Fox on YouTube. Yeah. A lot of Carrie, Rich, aka Fan the Deck. And I messaged both of those guys. I was like, listen, I'm going to start a podcast called the Nerd Nest Podcast. And do you guys want to be guests? And they said, absolutely. And then I think it was Carrie that suggested Russ, who was in that Discord, but he wasn't super chatty in the Discord. And I was like, oh, well, I'll reach out to him and see if he's interested. And I said, do you want to be a guest? And he said, yes. And then I said, well, is there anybody else? Because my goal was to always have 4 people. I didn't really want to have more than 4 people, but I know that sometimes people need days where they just can't meet up. So I was like, well, is there anybody else? And Carrie suggested that we invite Kyle, who he was at the beginning of it. And so we invited everybody on and like, they were all just going to be a guest and we chatted and it just worked so well. I felt. And so then I said, you guys are always welcome to come on anytime you want. And they said, well, are you recording next week? I said, yeah. And they're like, well, we'll be there. I was like, perfect. It's awesome.
Cool.
Then Kyle got a new job and he had to leave the show just because his time and my time weren't compatible really. And then I reached out to Jimmy to have him on, and Bob Wolf had been on. And now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to nail down like the format to have it be a 4-person show every time. And like right now I know that Russ is on vacation, so I'm looking to get a 4th for this week. Although this week is crazy time because it's not E3 or whatever. So I got to figure out if we're even going to do a show because we've got like live streams to watch and stuff. I don't know. It's strange. But I don't even know if I answered your question in that rambling.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I got lost in the details. But what I wanted to say was you guys, you feel like different parts of the same thing. Like you very much speak each other's language, and it feels like you get sucked into this little vortex of, you know, like you say something and then someone else says something, and then like it just like swirls and you're like, oh, you know, it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, I tried to get people on that had different strengths from my own.
Yes.
Like Carrie and Kyle, both very, very, technical. I'm not technical.
Yes. Yeah, Carrie's got like very good inside like information on the details of like the chips and the things.
Right. That's stuff that is outside of my wheelhouse. Russ does a lot of retro stuff. So I wanted to have somebody that we could always lean on old games too, which is why I invited him.
Yeah.
And then Rich, I felt like his content was the most similar to mine. And so I ended up inviting him because of that similarity. But everybody has like, they have their own different way of looking at the technology that we're talking about. And I just found, I said, I think that it would be compelling to have those different viewpoints.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's brilliant. I think you're really onto something with that. So don't get too bored because it's good.
It's easy for me to hold interest because there's other people on the show. It's hard for me to hold interest when it's just me. I get bored. Just me.
Yeah, and it's a bit of accountability. It's like a friend group, and it's nice to meet and all that, so it keeps you going. Cool. Okay, so I want to close out with this, and it's purely selfish.
Okay.
Because like I said to you, my game knowledge is growing slowly but surely. I'll tell you what is my Steam Deck is sitting here. I was hoping to be at my desk a bit sooner than I was. I was wanted to play some games. Come on, you. Exit game. I'll tell you what's on my Steam Deck. I buy everything that Aish from Retro Handhelds tells me to buy. I buy because his game recommendations are just gold. Like every time I get one of his games, it's good. So the games installed on my device. I got Bellatra for my wife, but it didn't take. Batman, Arkham Origins, BioShock. Haven't got into it, but it's pretty cool. Death Stranding, I love. Fallout 4, I actually loved it too much. I stopped playing because it like was taking over my life. Mm-hmm. I enjoy a good racing game like Forza Horizon 4. Sorry, I'm telling you this so that you can give me game recommendations.
Okay.
I like, what you call it? Narrative games like The Quarry. I don't know if you know it, but it's a horror narrative game. Quite enjoy that. Jedi Fallen Order. Very nice action role player. Stray, I haven't played it through, but I really like it. The Walking Dead narrative, like kind of set the stage for those sorts of games.
Yeah.
And then have you played What Remains of Edith Finch?
You know what? I own it. I've never played it.
It's short and it's, well, I don't know what you're into, but I really, like that was one of the first games I played on the deck and I just loved it. It's just like this moody, cozy, like it's like she goes to this house, almost like looks like Newfoundland, that like part of the world, like Maine, like those like gloomy kind of parts of the world. And then she goes home and tells you this long story. Anyway, really enjoyed it. Anyway, what games can you recommend for me and people watching?
Okay, so I want to try and you kind of gave me some things to think about for like what genres you have an affinity towards. I'm going to make...
Yes, sorry, I should have sent this to you beforehand so that you could feel a bit more prepared, but I'm throwing in the deep end,
I'm going... A couple of games that I think are very good on the Steam Deck that are not necessarily in those genres. Xenotilt.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Xenotilt? It is a pinball game. And it plays it's a pinball game. It's very, very good, and it's almost always very cheap. So I'm gonna highly recommend Xenotilt. Like if you're looking for, have you played Aperture Desk Job?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the first game.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure because that game is it's short and amazing, really, really fantastic.
Yes.
Scrolling through my list right now of games that I've put a lot of time into. Cult of the Lamb. Have you played that?
Cult of the Lamb. Oh, this is great. I haven't heard of any of these.
Okay, so Cult of the Lamb is a roguelike where you are trying to build like a society, and you're like this little sheep guy, and you have like these little animal people that come and live in your town, and they worship you as like a god, right?
All right. Okay.
But you get to like decide, okay, we're going to put gallows over here, or we're going to make it so that you guys, these two people have to fight to the death in order to appease me, the god. But then you also need things for them. So you have to go into a dungeon, fight monsters, come out with stuff in order to help your people out.
Okay, cool.
Cursed to Golf. You are a golfer.
To golf.
Cursed to Golf.
Yes.
You are a golfer who gets struck by lightning as you are about to win the championship. And you go to purgatory where you have to play golf to get out of purgatory. And it's a side-scrolling golf game. Absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to try and find one more for you as I scroll through my list of really, really cool games.
Well, that sounds wonderfully ridiculous. The golf one.
Cursed to Golf is fantastic. It's usually pretty cheap. All right, here we go. One that you may or may not have heard of, but plays fantastic on the Steamdeck, and will absorb many hours of your life. Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age is amazing. The story feels like Star Wars. It feels like you are playing a Star Wars game, but it's Final Fantasy.
Well, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. So
Okay.
and one more.
Oh, no.
Firewatch. You are a guy who, after going through a bad breakup, you decide I'm going to go be on a Firewatch tower, which is where you go into the wilderness up high in a tower and you watch for fires so that you can call them in so that the forestry service can come in and put out those fires. And you're in this tower, and then things happen that I won't spoil it for you. Things happen, but the only other person you can talk to is like on the radio, and you're like, you talk to this woman on the radio, voice acting absolutely top notch. Very short game. I played through the entire game, and then I went and got my wife, and I said, honey, I just finished this game. It's amazing. You should watch me play it, because she doesn't play games, but she likes to watch. Yes. So I was like, you should watch me play it. We sat down. We played through the whole game again. Twice in one day.
Crazy.
It's just a really cool game.
Firewatch. The store's a bit of a pain. Okay, cool. That's specifically. And I've never thought of getting into Final Fantasy, but you've kind of sold me.
See if there's a demo. Is what I would do.
Okay. Because it is quite expensive, isn't it?
I don't know. I bought it years ago.
I don't know. Just play it.
Yeah.
There we go. Firewatch. Okay, cool. I'm going to add it to my cart.
You could tell that I was going alphabetical because I only got to F.
Went through your thing. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah. As you go through your day, you'll be like, I should have told Aiden about this one.
I should have, yeah.
You can message me. Cool, Bill. Well, this has been great, like getting to know you and to hear a little bit about your life. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it was really great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Cool. Thanks, man.